wanna tell the world you're in love with a girl named Fran? So you find an overpass and you say it with a spray paint can. Blue lights start a blinking, those handcuffs click. You know who to call and you better call quick. Saul, Saul, you better call Saul. He'll fight for your rights when your back's to the wall. Stick it to the man, justice for all. You better call Saul.
Hey, what's up guys, Mega Gamer here, and welcome to my first ever review of Better Call Saul, which is the Breaking Bad spin-off starring Saul Goodman or Jimmy McGill. And I love Breaking Bad to death. I love it so much. I've seen it multiple times. I always love going back to just random episodes and just watching them again. I love Breaking Bad so much. So when I heard about this Better Call Saul spin-off they were doing, I was very curious, very excited. You know, I wasn't one of the skeptical types where, you know, this spin-off or this prequel that they're doing could hinder the original series in any way, or that it just simply won't live up to the hype. I wasn't thinking that way. And I'm not, you know, I understand when people think that way, because I feel that way about The Last of Us as well. If they do make a Last of Us sequel, I'm going to be super worried that it's going to hinder the first game. So I understand when people have that fear. Now, I have to think I probably just don't love Breaking Bad as much as I love The Last of Us, and that's why I have this feeling not towards Breaking Bad about Better Call Saul. Or maybe it doesn't feel direct. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I was pretty excited about Better Call Saul, and you know, a lot of other people are very excited. But at the same time, there is that fear that some might have that it just might not live up to the hype and it might not be as good. But I can thankfully say, at least from my opinion, that the first two episodes of Better Call Saul are fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to where this series is going. Originally, I was going to do a quick 5-minute review or something like that, but it might go a little longer because this might turn into a bit of a conversation about the first two episodes. So I'll do the 2 episodes now, the 2 premiere episodes, and then from week on, I'll just start doing, you know, the episodes as they come out for the show. So let us begin. So Better Call Saul, it opens up, it's black and white, and we're getting a bit of a sense of our surroundings. As Vince Gilligan does really, I can't really just say Vince Gilligan, but his team, they do a really good job with, first of all, both episodes are shot so beautifully that I'm not that kind of person who sits down and thinks, oh, why did they do this shot? This is kind of dumb. Blah, blah, blah. Why did they do this? Oh, this is a really good shot. I'm not that kind of person, but I just noticed it a lot more this time around, and probably because, you know, in high school I take media class pretty much every year, but it didn't really get prominent until the last year, where we actually started diving into all this stuff. So I've got a much bigger set of knowledge on how media and movies and all of that are made now. I got a much more realistic idea of all of it. So there, of course, there's a lot more appreciation now into shows like Breaking Bad, but when I first saw Breaking Bad, I didn't really have that knowledge. So I was like, okay, it's cool and whatnot, but I could pinpoint why I thought it was cool. And there's so many different reasons why Breaking Bad is amazing. But the way it's shot, Vince Gilligan's team, and the way they shoot these episodes is just, it's awesome. It's really good. Every single shot has so much thought put into it. That is very abundantly clear when you're watching these 2 episodes. So I just like when they do that. They have these shots that are just kind of like establishing shots. Anyway, you work out you're in a Cinnabon, and you see a Saul Goodman. It turns out to be, who I have to point out, kind of looks a bit like Walter White back in his series premiere days. I mean, he's got the mustache, he's got these kind of thickish glasses on now. He reminded me of Walter White when I first saw him. I mean, I knew it was Saul Goodman from the beginning, but I'm just saying it was pretty curious that he kind of ironic, really. And this scene is obviously a post Breaking Bad scene. This is the first glimpse we get after the show, or for all we know, it could actually be even before the show ends, because when Saul's flicking through the TV back at his house later on. I was expecting that it would come up with something like, oh, mass drug dealer Walter White has been found dead this morning, kind of, you know, throwback to the series finale. But it wasn't there, and that doesn't necessarily mean because it hasn't happened yet. But it's nice to think that maybe this is before that happened, because there were a few months since Saul left, in the second last episode of Breaking Bad, there was a few months since then, and then when Walter died. So it could be in between that point. And it is a throwback to what Saul said, where he's like, best case scenario, a month from now, I'll be a manager at Cinnabon, and I can't remember where he said, but that's exactly what happened, which I thought was pretty funny, that's what they did. And yeah, so it was cool to see that. It was really cool to see that. And then, Saul, he opens up his old tapes and is pretty much really sad and depressed at looking at his old Saul Goodman videos. And the thing, it goes back to Walter White, him looking like Walter White, I mean. I think that's just irony, because it's like, the reason he's here is because of Walter. I mean, there's probably a lot of other stuff going on we didn't really know at the time. I mean, Saul definitely had more clients than just Walt and Jesse and whatnot. But essentially, it was pretty much Walter White that caused him to go into this pretty much this witness protection, or Johnny Quick Vanish, as he may call it, situation where he had to leave everything behind, and now he's here and he's definitely not enjoying it as much as he did when he was Saul. And that was kind of sad. It was a really sad scene, actually. But then it cuts to the new intro, and then we go back into the show. So this is back, I believe it was like early 2002. I believe that the bills and that he got marked were marked like April or May 2002. So this is a good several years before Breaking Bad, which I think took place in about 2010 to 2011, the whole series. Actually, no, it would have been 2009 to 2011, because it took place over exactly 2 years, that show. So yeah, it's about several years beforehand, and then, the first half of this first episode, which I have to point out, the first time I watched it, I was a little, going back to the camera work, I was a little, I don't know what the word is, but I felt like pretty much every shot, there was no handheld movement. It was just the camera just placed there on a tripod or whatever, and just like sitting there doing whatever for the first half of the episode. And that kind of was like, I don't know, it was getting in the way of my enjoyment a little bit when I was watching it. And granted, the rest of the episode and the second episode, I didn't feel that way anymore, even though it was kind of the same level and there was still handheld thrown in there every now and then. I don't know why I felt that way. No, the second time I watched the episode, I watched both episodes a couple of times. The second time I watched the first episode, I didn't really feel that as much, so it might have just been me. It might have just been, I don't know, what I was eating when I was watching it. But that was something I noticed, and I'm not going to, I just felt I should at least point it out. But anyway, the first half of the episode is basically just showing off where Jimmy McGill is. He gets $700 for every case he takes. He pretty much loses every case because he consistently takes people who end up fucking heads of decapitated dead people. Yeah, that was so fucked up when that came up, but it was funny. And yeah, and then he's only making $700 a pop. He's kind of going not even head to head toe. He's kind of like looking up at this bigger corporation that was run by his brother Chuck, and you see the company they're sending him money. They're sending him money for Chuck because Chuck is one of the main. His name's in the building, McGill, I should really call him Jimmy because he's Jimmy at this point. Jimmy, he's not taking that. He wants Chuck to cash out, get the full. I believe he said $17 million that he wanted Chuck to cash out on, and the company's not buying it. So there is this sort of rivalry going on, but we all know where Jimmy is. He's nowhere near a competitive level with them. It's more of just a jealousy kind of level. And that was fun to see, especially since his brother Chuck's involved. And when we see Chuck, it turns out he's kind of got this fear where he can't really leave his house. He's got a fear of pretty much electronics. That's why Saul has to put his phone and all of that in the mailbox before he can even walk in the house. And even then, they have to have these like light up lamps and whatnot, just so they can move around. They don't have a fridge or anything. They have to put all their food in this like ice bucket thing. And that's a really interesting choice. It's a really interesting thing to keep. I guess it was, I don't want to say done for comedic purposes, but I guess it kind of was. Like, there's a million things they could have done to make Chuck homebound, but I guess that was just funny and kind of a nice, I don't know, it just kind of disabled Chuck in an interesting way. But that was a fun dynamic. Jimmy and Chuck, seeing them argue through both episodes, and that, like, it was a little bit intense, especially when you have a background knowledge. Like, I didn't understand exactly what Chuck's issue was until he threw the phone out of the house in the second episode, and then he was wearing the space blanket, as Jimmy called it. And at that point, it became a lot more obvious to me. Okay, this is his issue. At first, I thought the power was out at him and Chuck's house, and because of the lack of payment. And I thought that's why. But eventually, when I rewatched it all, it made a lot more sense, knowing that was what Chuck's issue was. And yeah, the arguments are kind of intense, but it was still a fun dynamic. I like seeing that. Anyway, going back, because I kind of went a bit of a tangent. I kind of missed out a couple of things. So there were two new clients that Jimmy, he was kind of really relying on these clients because they were going to be a big deal for him, but they turned away and ironically went to that big corporation I mentioned earlier. So Jimmy's having a pretty shitty time. His office is like in a nail salon, like in the basement area, basically. Like he's got no roof. You can see the air ventilation from there. That was an awesome shot, I have to admit. Man, I love it so much. There's so much to discuss here, and it's all done so well. The performances, I don't even have to talk about the performances. They were awesome as expected. Bob Odenkirk, Mike is in it as well. Mike has some cameos where he's kind of like the toll booth attendant, and every single time Jimmy doesn't have enough stickers on his little pass, so they always have like little arguments. That was awesome to see. I love that. Mike's my favorite Breaking Bad character. I'm so happy he's in this. I just hope his role gets a little bigger, because at the moment he's just the tall booth person who's in it like 5 times maybe, and 4 of those times is during like a little montage at the end of the second episode. I should have probably mentioned spoilers earlier in the video. I'll put it in the title, so it's okay. But yeah, I wish Mike had a bigger role, but I'm just hoping out whole. I'm not going to say anything because he probably will come up. I mean, he's the second name in the opening credits that comes up. It's Bob Odenkirk, and then it's Mike's character. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he'll become a more prominent role in the future. Anyway, about halfway through the first episode, we're going back to the story now. About halfway through the first episode, Jimmy runs into these skateboard scammers, if you will. They jump in front of cars and then ask for money. That's what these scammers do. And I don't even remember what their name was. I can't remember. They were brothers though, and what they did is they would try and get like $500 off someone as a bribe, really, after they jump in front of the car and yell and cry for help or whatever. But Jimmy's no idiot. He sees through this. He knows how the scam business works, I guess you could see from this. So he basically scares him off, and he's got a broken windshield, which is funny because I swear Vince Gilligan's team must have like a whole shack of free windshields everywhere, because they just fucking break him every 2 episodes in their shows. But regardless, now I thought this was just like another dumb layer to kind of like, okay, he's just kind of bad, out in his luck in this scenario. It's just another layer of this is kind of where his life is, and he's just got this bad luck. But it does play in later when he kind of wants to go up against, I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but he basically wanted to pull, not necessarily a scam, but kind of pulled the scam so that he could get involved, and then it would be a big deal for him. And I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but regardless, he got those two to help. So he kind of tracked them down. That was a nice shot at the skate park, oh my god, I love how this was shot. It's kind of inspirational for the stuff I want to do in the near future, but I'm not going to talk about that just yet. Anyway, so Saul tracks him down, Jimmy tracks him down, kind of comes up with a whole plan. They memorize the car, and they try and memorize the license plate and all of that. So everything's going in a plan, textbook as the brothers call it. But then when they hit the car drives off. No one comes out. No one sees for help. So the skateboarders track them down, and they see it's this old lady. It's definitely not. They don't know this, but it's definitely not who their real target was. Anyway, they're led into the house. Jimmy eventually finds them and knocks on the door as well. And the door opens, and none other than Tuco is here, and we got a surprise cameo from Tuco, and that was awesome. I loved it. I was like, oh my god, it's Tuco! Oh my god! And then that's the end of episode 1, which was a very awesome, nice cliffhanger. I loved it. it was great. And Tuco's back. It's like they didn't go all out with the cameo. I remember my brother saw this and he made a joke like, oh, like 3 episodes in, they're probably going to have cameoed every single Breaking Bad character. And I told him, like, really, it's just all it was Saul, Mike, and then Tuco. And Tuco's is a one-off. I'm assuming. I mean, you never know. He might come back later, but he seems like a one-off cameo where he's just in these 2 episodes, and we're probably not going to see him again for at least a little while. While Mike and Saul, they're regulars. They're the main cast. So that's only 3 characters. So I don't think that's going all out. So I think they did a good job with the cameos. I think, they barely showed anyone. It's fine. The show, it wants to be its own show, and I found a nice level of that. There was a lot of shout-outs and, throwbacks to not Better Call Saul, to Breaking Bad. I just realized, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, BB. Anyway, I felt it had a very good level of it being its own show, but having a lot of throwbacks to Breaking Bad, and I feel like what was going to happen was that they would have a lot of Breaking Bad references in the first few episodes and then slowly start to become its own show later on. But I feel like the level that they had right out of the gate, if they just didn't have like a Tuco appearance, because we really don't need cameos like that in every episode, just level it down so it's a realistic, it's realistic. They're not throwing cameos in for the sake of cameos. As long as they don't do that in the future, I think the amount of throwbacks and it being its own show was a perfect level, and they could keep that up for the whole series if they wanted to, with occasional cameos, like maybe every 5 or 10 episodes, or like twice a season at the most. They'll have a cool cameo pop out of nowhere, and it'll be fun. But I was really impressed with this first episode. Outside of like the little issue I had with like the camera stillness, which, that might have just been me. I'm not going to blame the episode on that because it's still beautifully shot, so I can't say that. It was a really good episode. It was really exciting. Obviously, the cliffhanger made you want to go into the second episode. And the tone that I'm getting of the series so far is that Breaking Bad was a really, dramatic, dark story with lots of comedy in it. Because honestly, I think Breaking Bad's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. That includes that. It's up there with other comedies and whatnot. But I think, Breaking Bad is a very serious, dark story with lots of comedy in it. While I think Breaking Bad is kind of the other way. It still feels very similar, but Breaking Bad it's a comedy with lots of dark, kind of serious tones coming into it, serious storylines. And, it's kind of opposites, where it's like Breaking Bad is just a dark show with comedy, and then Better Call Saul is a comedy with lots of dark, serious themes. But It as it sounds, it looks pretty similar. The tones in that for the shows are similar, and I think it's going to take a little longer to get into those serious kind of like the situations Walter got himself into with, Gus and all of that. Like those situations got so unbelievably intense, especially around the end of season 4. That I don't think we're going to get to that kind of level of intensity soon. But so without that, Better Call Saul does seem more like a comedy, and it is a comedy. It's a funny show. And, Saul, he's still himself. He's still given the same, quotes that we all, you think of Saul, you think of like 20 different things he said in Breaking Bad that were hilarious. And it's no different here. There's a bunch of quotes here that are funny, like that. The only way his car would be $500 if he has a $300 hooker in the back, that kind of stuff. It's the same good old Saul. You gotta love it. Now, I really am going on almost 20 minutes and I've only covered the first episode, but it was a really good episode, and we're going to jump right into the second one. So the second one, pretty much the first half of it is him dealing with Tuco. Tuco throws him into the house, he's got the gun. The episode actually starts off and it plays out what happens when the brothers walk in. They're basically, they're going off with Tuco saying, oh, blah, blah, blah. They hit us, we need money. She hit us, you guys deserve money. And Tuco knocks them the fuck out. The reason is because they called his grandmother biznatch. Not a very good idea when you do that to Tuco. So anyway, when Saul walks in, they have this whole thing. He kind of explains the debacle, even though he's got the gun on he's got the gun on him. When he goes to Tuco, generously, in his well-maintained home and everything, he lets Saul, get the knife and, set free the 2 brothers. And then they start yelling that it was all Saul's idea, and obviously lots of misconception and lots of mistrust and all that. They end up in the desert. Saul's with not Saul. Tuco's with a bunch of his friends, and shit's getting real out in the desert. Now, Saul, or Jimmy, talks his way out of basically getting killed. With Vass from Far Cry 4, or Far Cry 3, sorry. He's there, and he kind of convinces Tuco to let Jimmy go free, because he didn't insult him like the other two in their biznatch crap. So he lets him go, but then an interesting thing is that Jimmy turns around and spends a good 10 minutes, well, it might not have been 10 minutes, but he spends an awful long time in a very funny and disturbing conversation at the same time to try and get those two out of the situation. And the thing I found really interesting halfway through this, and I'm like, this just feels different. And then I realized it's because this is Jimmy McGill. He wants to help these two out. He doesn't want these two to die. Imagine if it was Walter in the same situation. Walter manipulated two people to help him do this thing with a promise of, what, $2,000? And then they're all three of them in this completely dire situation. Walter barely makes it out himself. He is not going to go out of the way to save those two. I mean, he might have in like the first season or two, especially if Jesse was involved. But, you know, in the later half of the season, the second half, Walter would have been like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here. And he wouldn't have gave two shits. But seeing Jimmy like fight, really negotiate to get their sentence down as much down as possible. And another quote that is probably my favorite, it's probably one of my favorite lines in the whole premiere episode, was that, I brought you down from a death sentence, sorry. I brought you down from a death sentence to a 6-month probation. I am the best lawyer ever. That was awesome. And that is essentially what happened. He knocked it down from, like, you know, getting them killed or skinned up or having their eye stabbed out or breaking their arms and legs to just breaking one leg each. And that was really, it was a funny conversation. Half of it, I just started laughing. I'm like, this is the most ridiculous conversation ever. And the two there are on the floor screaming into their bloody finnies that are tied around their mouth. And then as soon as Tuco's like, yeah, let's break this, it's funny as well, because, like, oh man, you love seeing him be crazy. And then he's like, I'm going to make this one real clean. Fucking, And it was so disturbing at the same time. And then, you know, Saul's chatting up. Next second, he's chatting up this girl at a bar, and he sees, like, the little finnies be snapped. Obviously, reminds him of the legs. He ends up throwing it up in the bathroom. And then this leads to another funny conversation. He gets home with Chuck, and then Chuck has to throw the phone out because he forgot to put it in or ground himself or whatever. Space blanking, all of that. So, you know, that was all awesome to really see. And I don't want to say it dragged on too long. Episode 2 kind of felt like there was a lack of content, and the stuff that they had there kind of dragged on a lot. Now, you were kind of in the moment, so you didn't really think about it. I mean, I felt that, you know, the dinner scene with Saul and that chick probably dragged on a little bit too long. The montage at the end where he's kind of like doing his lawyer stuff, I guess that was a little bit long as well. They probably could have shortened that a little bit, like another 30, 60 seconds maybe. I don't know. I felt like there just wasn't a lot of content in the second episode that you know, they had to drag it. Like the whole Tuco thing was half the episode, and that seems alright because it was a big part of it. But then you really think about the content of the episode. It's like, what happens? He gets himself out of this Tuco situation, and he gets home. Then he goes to the dinner, throws up in the toilet, goes home, pisses off his brother with his phone, and then he does his lawyer stuff in a 5-minute montage, and then all of a sudden, Vass from Far Cry 3 shows up at his doorstep asking for some help, which that's probably going to play in much later in the episode, but that was the whole episode. And I might be a little too harsh because I'm sure Breaking Bad had episodes like that as well that I just kind of missed, because I watched Breaking Bad. I binged it over like the course of a month. It was all already out by the time I started watching. I didn't watch it till like March last year, and I watched the whole thing over the course of a month. While with this time, I don't have that same luxury because I'm watching this Better Call Saul from day one, so I have to wait the days and the weeks to find out what happens next. So it might just be that extra patience I need that's kind of affecting the way I'm seeing these episodes and their pacing. For all I know, I could just be subconsciously thinking, oh, this was a weird episode, there wasn't a lot to it. Even though it was a good episode, I think it was better than the first in a lot of ways. It was just, yeah, I don't know. That might just be me, and I'll see how the pacing is in other episodes. But I felt like, yeah, they did kind of stretch out some of the stuff that happened in the second episode a bit much. And I was kind of curious because there definitely were scenes I saw in ads that weren't in either of these 2 episodes. So that was really curious for me. There's one of the shots with Saul where and Mike, where Mike actually gets out of the booth and kind of like pins him down. And there's another shot where I think Saul's Saul was with 2 other guys running from cops or whatever, and then they get cornered. I didn't see shots there was nothing like that in the first 2 episodes. So I feel like the ads actually went further than the 2 episodes, which is kind of exciting. We'll see where we go. And that's the thing. After the second episode, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? What is the show actually going to be about primarily? And that's exciting, of course. I'm excited. I really am. This is gonna be a really good show. There's still a few questions. I really enjoyed the 2 episodes that we got. It's just there are questions that hopefully we will kind of get answered in the 3rd episode as to where are we going to go from here. This was kind of like the prologue to the series. These are the 2 episodes to start everything up. And now hopefully in the 3rd episode we're going to just land on here's what you should expect the rest of the season or the series or whatever. We know the tone. We know the first 2 episodes, they gave us a good taste of what to expect in terms of the actual show itself. And the content, of course, but just the actual basic general storyline that's going to follow throughout is still a little unclear. And hopefully we'll get a better idea of that in a few days, because I'm filming this Saturday, Valentine's Day. Yay. I'm spending it really nicely. And I'll be able to see episode 3 by Tuesday. And now that I've kind of settled on this more, general discussion, kind of let's just talk about the episode at my own pace kind of thing, where it's almost a half an hour video now. Jesus. Now that I've kind of landed on this, it's easier of going into this to film than instead of planning everything, typing on my computer, and then, yeah. So the videos are longer and they're a little more in depth, but they are technically easier to film now, so I won't have to worry about, only getting it done on weekends or barely fitting in time on a school night or whatever, a weekday. It'll be fine. So, and plus I only have to cover 1 episode as opposed to 2 from now on, so that's cool. But yeah, that's my overall opinion. I'm not going to give scores or anything like that to each episode. I might give a score to every season once they're done, an 8 or 9 out of 10 or whatever. But I'm not going to give them to individual episodes. I just feel that's just way too micromanaging. I feel like that's kind of reviewing every scene in a movie before reviewing the actual movie itself. That's what I feel like it's like. So I'm not going to do that. I don't know. I just don't like it. So yeah, that's Better Call Saul. 2 great starters, and you got to compare this to the beginning of Breaking Bad. It actually took me a while to get into Breaking Bad. I watched the first 3 episodes, or the first 2, I think, and then I had a couple of weeks break, and then I finally was like, okay, I'll watch 4 and 5, and then from 4, 5, 6, then I started binging them like hell. So considering that I watched the first few episodes of Breaking Bad, and I was still not really into it, and then I had to wait a couple of weeks to get back into it, and then it got rolling. Considering that, Better Call Saul's got a much cleaner, much better intro that is a little more enticing. Is it better than Breaking Bad? I really don't think it has the opportunity to be, because it feels like a Breaking Bad episode, but from completely different viewpoints in a different time, different place. Well, not even a different place, but it still feels like a Breaking Bad episode at its core. You can tell it's the same team making it clearly, but at the same time, I think for what it actually is, I don't think it's possible for it to be better than Breaking Bad. I mean, this is a terrible example. It's an exaggerated one, but you understand what I'm getting at. It's hard to say that 50 Shades of Grey has the potential of being better than Birdman, if we're comparing movies here, just because of what they are. Birdman, there's so much going through, and they did it so well, while 50 Shades of Grey, it's a fucking porno, so they're going to have to try pretty damn hard to get it to that level. Now, again, that's a really exaggerated example, but that's where I'm coming from, is that what Better Call Saul is, it might be a bit hard to actually make it better than Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad has the opportunity to be as great as it was. But it doesn't mean we can't enjoy Better Call Saul. I'm really, really, really pleased with these 2 episodes. I love Vince Gilligan, his team, and what they're able to do. All the actors in it, they were all great performances as expected. Tuco was a good surprise. Every single shot, the way it was filmed and shot, was just fantastic. The scripts were great as always, especially with Saul at front and center. Everything he says is so awesome. So him being a protagonist this time is even better. It's awesome. It really is. And I can't wait for the third episode to see where this is all going to go. So thanks for watching Mega Gamer, and see you around.